Hello to all landlubbers, and welcome to our live broadcast from the most stunningly beautiful island in the world, presented in vibrant color from Peru Place. I'm Peru, and I warmly greet you all. Ladies and gentlemen, we are once again on the move in Ships at Sea. If you recall, in the previous episode, we were delving into the beta version to evaluate a novel feature, specifically the transportation of passengers, which functioned moderately well, I must say. Mediocre is the most appropriate term. Yes, the passengers were there, we were able to bring them on board, they traveled with us, felt comfortable on board, even discovered a bit of sport, but we couldn't unload them. That didn't work, especially at the port of Theosthamron. Nothing worked at all. We suddenly didn't have a docking place anymore. This implies that the passengers were required to remain on the vessel indefinitely for an endless duration. Clearly, that is not the intended outcome. However, there has been a significant update, or more precisely, the update has now been officially released and is no longer in the beta phase, but rather in the standard version, which means we are progressing once more. We have now transitioned back to the standard version, which is still in the early access phase, and we shall proceed to undertake a second endeavor to transport the passengers. So, keep your fingers crossed, knives out of your mouth, here we go. Yes, let's get started. Oh, before we begin, don't forget, if you like it here, show a little love to Save Germany. Thumbs up, ring the bell, subscribe. That was an instruction. So, alright, putting humor aside for a moment, let's comprehensively examine if and what kind of passenger transportation options are available here for us. Here comes the very first one already indeed. It is somewhat too unsettling here for me with other individuals around, as it appears to be an issue. We are certainly not venturing into the unfamiliar. Let's determine if there is another task available for us. It appears that we have located one. So, 2 individuals as passengers. Well, we wish to begin our journey modestly from Rust to Lingua. It is not a vast distance now. This is a single journey through the harbor, and that was already 0.2 nautical miles, 1442. Well, it doesn't need to be lengthy, it simply needs to function properly. That's why we're here, we just want to check if it works now. Alright, then we shall take on the challenge, we'll accept the mission, and now we likely have to gather our passengers once more. Right behind there, they're already bustling around actively. I am intrigued to observe if they will overhaul the passenger system. At present, it is necessary to collect the passengers individually and subsequently guide them to the vessel one at a time. Well, I think later on the passenger ferries are supposed to come too. I assume they can hold significantly more than 2 passengers. You can't pick them all up individually, so the colleagues need to work on that again. From my viewpoint, as long as it appropriately aligns and fits well, everything appears to be in the correct order. So, I am genuinely intrigued to know if we are now able to pick up passengers from every single port, or if, as it was previously, it remains possible solely in Reuss. Nevertheless, there is certainly an individual who is continuously hammering away in the distant background. Alright then, so, if you are a passenger, please come along with us. Is he coming? He's coming. Okay. Yes, well, I think it's quite nice here. As I said, with 2 passengers you can manage that, then you can also pick them up and lead them to the ship. Nevertheless, when there are more than 5 passengers, it becomes quite bothersome. I'm not sure about the usual number of passengers intended for the Tomcat. If it's always 2, that would be illogical, because as far as I know, we have approximately 10 or 20 seats available on the Tomcat. I hope it will be revised a little more thoroughly, but for the time being, everything should function properly. That would indeed be the most crucial aspect. Consequently, I respectfully ask you to come back to this particular location once again. So, colleague, in the place where there is an absence of snow, well, is he arriving at this moment or not? Okay, he has come on board. Wonderful. Make yourself comfortable. The cafeteria will open shortly. On the vessel, it is referred to as the galley. We should express it accurately. Indeed, I must now send him a message, since we can only disembark from the rear of the boat. He has already settled in here. That's nice. By the way, I've temporarily taken the two crew members off board. I can hire them. So, two technicians can currently be hired for the Scomcat, but it doesn't make sense because they aren't doing anything yet. As soon as they actively fulfill a task once more, we will gladly welcome the colleagues back on board. However, at the moment, they are simply an extraordinary financial burden. As I said, that's why I've left them out for now. Subsequently, there exists passenger number 2. Passenger, we earnestly desire to uphold accuracy in this particular matter. Join us, indeed, join us on a journey to the land of adventure. Indeed, that is exactly what I am alluding to. She is situated somewhat farther away than the initial passenger, so you are already somewhat in motion before you even commence the journey. As I previously mentioned, I believe it is acceptable if you need to address the passengers, but they should be capable of locating the vessel independently. It is not such a significant issue here at the ports. So, madam, I sincerely hope you feel at ease on board. Hello? Yes, she appears to be lost in her thoughts, so naturally you do not wish to interrupt her. Correct? All right, it is a brief voyage to Lingua, but that is suitable for testing purposes. I just want to swiftly activate what we require here. Hello, I have just encountered a kink in my lens turning off. Why is it functioning now? I was just about to remark, why is the device not activating here? All right, autopilot. We do not require the radio at this moment. What else do we have here? What do we have activated? That indeed aligns exceptionally well. That indeed aligns. Primary illumination? Well, I merely intended to ascertain if the lighting conditions are sufficiently adequate. Lanterns are activated precisely as they should be. Splendid, then I would propose we commence our journey from here. You must exercise a bit of caution here. You understand what I mean with the Scomcat. It possesses a somewhat independent nature, I must confess. You must exercise extreme caution. Now here, I was just about to mention we're colliding with objects fore and aft, but we must orient ourselves somehow, otherwise we shall not exit the harbor. I perceive the Scomcat as somewhat cumbersome for being such an agile and dynamic vessel. It's occasionally quite awkward in maneuvering. We've just incurred 20% damage once more without any necessity. You observe it here at 73%. Miss Games needs to reevaluate it. That cannot persist. The vessel is exceedingly sensitive, and on the other hand, wait a moment, I need to verify Lingver. Yes, that's the situation here. On the other hand, it's so agile, but regrettably not very adaptable, I would assert. Let's observe how we navigate this. There's our destination already, and you observe it tends to drift slightly to the side, left or right. So something needs to be addressed regarding that. The Scombear or Tomcat, whatever designation you prefer, this drifting around is not beneficial. Ultimately, it only results in one outcome, namely repairs. It merely costs you money. What is the benefit of the most delightful passenger journey if you must expend all the funds on repairs that ought not to be necessary? That circumstance is indeed rather troublesome. So presently, is there a strategically positioned buoy here, or what exactly is happening? It's obstructing the designated pathway, everyone, and it's just one of those particularly challenging days for me, so don't be surprised if my driving appears a bit unusual. Somehow I leapt out of bed today and thought, let's create a new episode of Chips, it's about time. Yes, and here I am with eyes half open, but I must produce a video now. It's evident when I declare I'm creating a video, I'm indeed creating a video, regardless of the time. As long as there's coffee, anything's achievable. Alright, so there is our harbor. Let's ascertain whether we can successfully dock at this particular location. In the previous episode, we encountered a significant issue at Thais Hammarin. Presently, the Scomcat is certainly not a small vessel. It is considerably larger than the typical ships that usually dock here, which implies we must verify the situation. Indeed, there is no docking space available, which is precisely the predicament we faced earlier. I hope if we align ourselves now that it will work out here, otherwise we have to try again at the main dock later to see if it works there. So, I'm attempting to progress a little further once again. Let's envision a more refined advancement here, but regrettably, it does not indicate, unfortunately, lost. At this juncture, the sole remaining option is option B, which signifies that we shall attempt to dock at the primary quay, thus proceeding further towards the left. I have this persistent suspicion that despite all efforts and even with the recent update, it still does not quite manifest in this context. That's quite frustrating because, to be completely honest, we should generally observe a marker here at this point. Hold on a moment, we should typically see a stopping marker here, whether it is at the smaller pier or the quay itself, but neither is visible, right? Both are not visible. Oh dear folks, this is certainly quite something once more. Alright, let's give it another attempt. Observe, it's drifting excessively long and far away here. Young ones. I believe the update didn't quite achieve the intended result, I must say. Now observe, even though I wasn't fully attentive, we've collided with the buoy once more, and that's an additional 10% damage. This is a distance of not even a full nautical mile. And aside from the buoy, the previous damages weren't our responsibility, but simply because, unfortunately, the Scomcat remains somewhat uncontrollable. So here we bump against it once again, and now we have 59% damage. That shouldn't occur. This vessel incurs damage just by glancing at it, which doesn't make logical sense, my friends. Because then the passenger trips, even if they succeed, even if we manage to disembark them, which doesn't appear likely at this moment, it doesn't make sense. You end up spending more on repair expenses than you earn from any passenger trips. Just a few preliminary thoughts, you know. I'm attempting to reach the main quay once more. We'll probably scrape against it again. The Scomcat will probably falter here again and sustain endless damage just because it briefly touches the quay, which should be normal for a vessel. That's why we have the tires to absorb such minor bumps without damage. Unfortunately, the Scomcat doesn't consider that at all. You merely touch the quay or even just glance at it, and the ship is damaged. That's at least something that could be improved, to put it politely. Consequently, we are presently reversing as it appears there exists an object in the vicinity. Kindly reduce speed for the docking procedure. There was just something, and it appears that there is an available space. Oh, but now we really need to get in here with some fine work. Oh dear, I genuinely dreaded this particular situation. What I truly appreciate about Miss Games is that they consistently respond promptly to community reports and feedback, and subsequently make every effort to rectify the situation. To be entirely truthful, the correction in this specific situation has regrettably gone somewhat astray. And this problem does not seem to exclusively affect the harbor sections, but rather harbors in a more general sense. It appears there is a standstill here as well, but the parking area, well, we're encountering it once again. It is of no significant consequence now. I merely wish to endeavor to enter here with the courage born out of sheer desperation. Indeed, as I have previously mentioned, it appears that within the domain of strategic planning there might have been a minor oversight at Miss Games concerning the entry into the harbors with the Scomcat vessel. The sensitivity in this context requires significant reduction, because if not, our esteemed colleagues, the valued players, will not derive enjoyment from the passenger experience. If the vessel incurs damage simply by gently making contact with the quay, you understand, my dear friends, that is entirely ineffective, so please address that matter with significant urgency. Therefore, we shall endeavor to dock at this specific location presently, and even if it succeeds, it remains an unprofitable endeavor, and as I previously mentioned, that is not the primary objective. Thus, if the disembarkation of passengers generally functions at this moment, then that is indeed quite pleasant, correct? Nonetheless, as I have stated previously, the Scomcat undeniably requires a comprehensive and thorough revision. Therefore, I am proceeding at a very gradual pace currently, and it appears that there is indeed a designated space for docking at this location. However, it is exceedingly small, necessitating that we locate the precise position. We also do not possess a docking marker in this location, similar to what we typically have with transport ships such as cargo ships or fishing vessels. We have no markings here, I don't know why. So now it's showing us again that no docking space is available. We know this game already. Now let's drive a little further into the dock here. Yes, come on, do not slack off at this moment. So we did observe during the initial docking attempt, albeit briefly, just for a short moment, there was a kind of docking yes sign, although you can't precisely call it that, but it was indeed indicated. Indeed, you are able to dock at this location. However, it is not fully operational at this moment. It is not fully operational yet. So if it does not function in the beta version, but now they have implemented it, and according to them, they have already resolved the issue. Now it truly needs to operate at least somewhat effectively. Can we reach it now? Do you think we can get to it? I mean, docking ought to really be the most straightforward and uncomplicated task by this point, shouldn't it? I mean, we have successfully accomplished this with the other ships as well, haven't we? What's going on with the Scomcat that we can't manage it? I don't understand that. So, what additional strategies can we still put into action considering that the vessel is engineered to accommodate passengers, at least a couple, since it is categorized as a Tier 2 service vessel? If we remember accurately, it has the capability to take on passengers. Alternatively, we might contemplate trying to utilize the other vessel instead of the Scomcat. Folks, I haven't even navigated around here in the harbor yet. I feel somewhat inept in this specific situation. Observe, we're already down to 40% damage, and that's entirely unacceptable. So we're here, and I'm intentionally bumping a bit to illustrate that this damage model is truly exaggerated and requires correction, which is not acceptable. Oh my goodness, we've docked, folks, we've docked, but at what expense? Please observe. 43% damage, most of it sustained merely from lightly touching the dock. Miss Games, homework, detention, improvement is necessary. Okay, let's see. Do I have to guide the colleagues off the ship? I almost have the sensation, like a mother with a box, where was the key? I almost feel like I have to film them off the ship here. I don't think there are passengers to take on here, but I don't think we can take any here. So, hello, I actually intended to disembark here. What was I going to say? Oh, I do not believe we have any passenger assignments at this specific location. Please hold on for a brief moment. Do I need to accompany them off the vessel? Kindly hold on for a brief moment. Do I need to personally escort them off the vessel? Are they unable to discern where they should proceed? Must I personally guide them off the ship? What is this? Welcome to Lingver. Ah, yes. Okay, so I don't need to pick them up, but I must inform them that it is indeed the final stop. So, yes, overall it functions adequately, but as I mentioned previously, the Scomcat, the vessel itself, folks, you need to enhance that. It's not entirely satisfactory. The vessel itself is acceptable, but the docking process, you need to improve that. It cannot and should not incur so much damage from a gentle bump, let's say. We didn't collide with it or anything, because we can observe that we'll soon return to the right and yes, rectify that. At this specific moment in time, we currently possess 4 items, and we are able to transport them with us since we are obligated to return anyway. That irritates me as well, because 43%, that's quite a considerable amount of money, isn't it? This is an expression of greeting. Hello. At this particular moment in time, given that we haven't participated in any freight-related activities for a significant period, I find myself needing to reacquaint myself with the entire process here. Furthermore, there's another aspect I wish to emphasize, specifically that it seems I am only able to disembark from the stern on the Scomcat. This suggests that I'm obligated to navigate the entire ship 2 or 3 times to load my cargo. Interestingly enough, I am able to board through the bow, yet I am unable to disembark from that location. Why it is like that, why it should be like that, I don't know. There are still a number of issues present here even after the recent update, we must acknowledge, but on a more optimistic note, the passenger transportation system operates effectively. There's no denying that fact. As I previously mentioned, I'm eager to immediately test the Tier 2 service ship, provided you have the inclination, available time, and sufficient patience. As stated earlier, there is capacity for 2 passengers, and given that we are currently limited to transporting only 2 passengers, it is of no consequence. We could opt for the smaller ship, but my primary interest lies in observing whether the damage model is similarly exaggerated in that context. Up until now, it has not been the case, but I am keen to investigate further. Now, quite naturally, the question that comes to mind for me is, what are the upcoming plans concerning passengers? Will there perhaps be the opportunity for passengers to embark at any given port in the future, or will it be exclusively limited to the major ports only? In what manner does one of the principal ports within the game, such as Rust, operate, for example? As for the more substantial ports, we are not completely sure about that just yet, am I right? We will need to monitor, and we must permit ourselves to be amazed. Very well, then it's back to Rust and subsequently have it repaired first. It annoys me, folks, it annoys me that this didn't have to happen. On this particular occasion, we are moving forward with our cargo, yet encountering over 50% damage during such an expedition is rather unusual. There are a few issues for me, and you are welcome to write in the comments how you perceive it, but I identified 2 problematic areas for the Scomcat. One is what I refer to as this veering, where it drifts excessively to the left or right when you change direction, whether it's from left to right or front to back. It consistently does this. And the docking behavior is currently the most problematic aspect of the Scomcat. While it's not entirely unmanageable, the ship is quite awkward to handle at this moment. As a result, I would say you might occasionally find yourself bumping into various objects. Indeed, and as I previously mentioned, it absolutely can and must not be the case that the ship sustains damage from even the slightest, and I emphasize here, the very slightest contact with the docking area. That is entirely unrealistic and, most importantly, fundamentally frustrating for the player. In the long term, I would argue it significantly decreases the motivation to continue playing. So, let's just take our time and gently drift along the quay for a brief period here. As I have mentioned earlier, the Scomcat is currently, and quite unexpectedly, not the most straightforward vessel to navigate. At the current juncture, I would absolutely not recommend it to beginners at all. I mean, they won't be able to fully relish the Scomcat so swiftly anyway, since you must earn everything here with licenses and such. But truly, it's solely for seasoned captains, and as I mentioned, it possesses its peculiarities that you must live with and accept. However, as I mentioned, Miss Games also needs to take some action. So, here's the situation once more. It continues drifting even though I've long steered in the opposite direction, and just now it drifted yet again. Folks, that's not favorable. That's not favorable. Frankly, the Scomcat needs to return to the garage, or rather the shipyard, for some rework. It's not acceptable, because whether advancing or reversing, the steering doesn't know where it intends to go, and that shouldn't be the case. Look, I can't even evade this small boat here, not even at the slowest speed, because this thing just drifts left or right completely randomly and arbitrarily. Yes, here once more, observe how much damage we've already sustained due to the ship's uncontrollability. You shouldn't incur such damage because of the ship's uncontrollability. Apologies, my alarm is going off. I actually intended to get up at this time. Anyway, so now observe, we have the situation I was discussing. One of the simplest maneuvers is genuinely an act of art here. I just want to dock in Røst. It's a large harbor. It can't be like this. I can't even turn around within the harbor with this thing, because it drifts. It doesn't function. And as I mentioned, the damage model is a punishment for every player. People, fix this. It's actually a nice ship, and I was genuinely looking forward to it. It worked much better before the update. So, please rework the physics and driving physics urgently and quickly. I hope we can at least get it to function as I envision, but I don't know why the Scomcat has been made almost unsteerable and why this wasn't noticed before the release of the update. So now we're already at 34% damage. It's just a body count, and that's frustrating. As I mentioned, we shouldn't deceive ourselves. I'm anticipating a financial setback here because regrettably the ship's steering is utterly unmanageable. I'll just state it plainly, and that's the stark reality. Yeah, you're making a loss, right? Due to damage. At this point, we are able to dock just a little bit. Indeed, it is quite unfortunate, particularly due to the Scomcat, which is a vessel that I genuinely have a strong liking for, as I have previously mentioned. Regrettably, however, at this particular moment in time, it is not navigable for me. It is unfortunately not operational, at least not without risking some damage, but we are here to generate a profit, not to experience any damage. Also minus. Oh, indeed, absolutely. I completely overlooked something quite significant. My shipment. Amidst all this conversation, you see, I completely forgot my shipment right here. Oh, folks, it's truly a disappointment because this is evidently a feature that numerous individuals were eagerly anticipating. A vessel, or rather a ship that many were enthusiastic about, which wasn't so excessively sensitive prior to the update and was considerably simpler to control. Why it was altered so drastically, I am unsure. I sincerely hope that someone from Miss Games takes note of this game, or that other users also reach out and express, everyone, you absolutely need to reevaluate this. Therefore, we shall attempt once more in a short while, just for a brief moment, to determine if we are already capable of taking on passengers with the Service 2 vessel here. As I mentioned earlier, in theory, that ought to be feasible, given that it's also crafted for election observation purposes, so we indeed have passengers whom we have not observed until this point, but I believe that should be the situation now, correct? In the circumstance that we have non-player character passengers, we will most certainly conduct a more thorough examination. So, yes, you can already see that the Scomcat is not necessarily suitable as a cargo ship, especially since you always have to trek to the stern to disembark. However, if you are presented with the opportunity to either return without any cargo and at least earn a modest amount of money to cover the repair expenses, you would naturally prefer to return with some cargo, correct? Of course. Therefore, we have a single one remaining, but it has deteriorated to merely 30%, folks, worn down to a 30% condition. Isn't that correct? So, thank goodness there are merely four boxes. Therefore, this is the final one. Yes, indeed, the final one. Please remain seated. Come on, let's not cause a significant commotion over this situation. At the very least, it's 4,600 Norwegian kroner. I believe we are likely to expend considerably more on the repairs soon, so let's take a brief glance here. I don't quite recall what we have already spent, or rather, we generated a considerable amount of revenue from the passenger trip, and I should verify it once more in the replay, but we certainly earned approximately 4,000 from the goods delivery. Now, let's examine what we are expending on repairs. It's already appearing quite dismal, truly dismal. Observe here, we have 8,000 Norwegian kroner, which indicates we're functioning at a 50% deficit, folks. It's really unfortunate, and I don't know the colleagues to make such a blunder. I hope it was an error, a mishap, but that simply cannot occur, friends. It just cannot. So, as previously stated, we're transitioning to the MacGyver 2, the Class 2 service vessel, to determine if it performs better with passenger transport. As mentioned, if only 2 individuals arrive simultaneously as passengers, that's sufficient. Now, let's check if we already have a passenger order once more. Nope, nothing here, okay? We'll rest on it for a night and see if we have a new trip the following day, because I want to know, I want to experiment with it. Otherwise, why not utilize the Tier 2 ship? That is effective as well. So, what time is it currently? 14:35, let's say 18 or 19 hours, or actually 17 will suffice. That brings us to 8:30 in the morning, adhering to the motto, the early bird can get lost. It's looking somewhat mixed, a bit peculiar. Hopefully, no storm is forming today. Anyway, we want to investigate passenger transport to unknown. There is no unknown, friends, so this appears to be a glitch, which is unfortunate when you want to attempt something and nothing materializes. I didn't want to engage in whale watching. We know that functions. We're concentrating on passenger transport. I'll give it one more attempt, rest on it another night, and if the new passenger order isn't present, we'll leave it for today. I also have to work today. Certainly, then, we will simply defer it to one of the upcoming episodes. It's not a significant issue, but I would have preferred to experiment with it. Thus, we are indeed capable of conducting operations for a full 24-hour period at present. Yes, a vessel in distress is certainly noteworthy, yet we are not inclined to embark on a rescue mission. All right, let us thoroughly examine this. Still seas, election monitoring, and so on. Indeed, oh Father, thank you, indeed. So, all right, he should accept it presently. We must verify if he does. Theoretically, it ought to function. The MacGyver 2 possesses 3 passenger seats. Thus, the colleagues absolutely need to come aboard. It's not quite as luxurious as the Scomcat, yet currently simpler to manage. I dislike admitting it, but it's true. All right, let us keep this concise. The benefit, naturally, of this small vessel here of Class 2 is that it is among the swiftest ships in the entire game, which implies we can also arrive at Stavoya in a remarkably brief period. I suppose, for the time being, server ships are not mainly intended as passenger vessels. However, since the MacGyver 2, as I refer to it, is a service ship, it is inherently crafted for such purposes. Additionally, it is designed for election observation, which means I can accommodate passengers, albeit a limited number. As I mentioned, at present there are generally only 2 passengers, so indeed it functions adequately. Has he already boarded the ship? Is he presently on board? Where is he presently situated? Kindly refrain from telling me that he isn't coming aboard, as that would indeed be quite the conclusion, wouldn't it? Certainly, proceed along. Proceed along to the realm of adventure. That would indeed be quite something now, wouldn't it, if he chooses not to come aboard? It's not precisely an enormous vessel, but it is indeed your boat, so you shall come aboard quite nicely now. What? Please wait for the arrival and kindly disembark. Is he currently on board now? Ah, there is Hein Jung, so he has indeed come aboard, and that is already worth quite a significant amount. So there is passenger number 2, all right, so it operates with the Tier 2 vessel as well, and I sincerely hope they haven't altered anything in the controls of the Tier 2 ship. In any situation, not to the disadvantage of the Scomcat. Therefore, I don't wish to discuss a catastrophe, but I can only firmly recommend against utilizing it at this time. You spend a greater amount on repairs than on any other expense. Alright, so it seems that everyone is in consensus, and I believe that is quite advantageous. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Alright, let's proceed with the route planning procedure here. Oh yes, indeed, it has been quite some time since I last participated in this. Route planning, you understand? That's precisely where it is located back there. Yes, indeed. We absolutely must navigate that curve. Alright, I didn't anticipate having to begin with route planning once more today, but alright, I'm doing it entirely for you. Certainly here we have several shallows along the route which absolutely must be taken into consideration. Greetings. It is indeed quite unusual with the route today. However, it is not a particularly significant issue. How can I travel most cheaply now? Or how do I usually travel? No idea. We'll just take this route here. Absolutely, I am thoroughly convinced that it makes perfect sense. By consistently following along this wall right here precisely, I recall that. It's not exactly a killer route. Therefore, that ought to be sufficiently satisfactory. Alright, let's commence or move forward, as it appears that something is indeed occurring. Yes, it has some dynamics, doesn't it? Be careful when you set off. At first you think nothing's happening, and then suddenly it takes off. That can happen sometimes. Alright, let's go ahead and activate the navigation system, even though I haven't observed any noticeable changes occurring just yet. Alright, at this particular moment I have everything right here. No, I don't need to be that close at this point in time. We're not fishing after all. Then it should indeed function in that manner. Certainly, our two colleagues who are present here are currently aboard, and they appear to be enjoying themselves somewhat outside as far as I am aware. Some people like it more lively and energetic, but everyone has their own preference. With the significantly smaller vessel, docking should not present any issue whatsoever. At the very least, I sincerely hope so. If the circumstances surrounding the ship become better, then that is perfectly acceptable to me. As long as we are able to commence the passenger voyages and we are limited to only 2 passengers at any given time, it is absolutely acceptable to utilize the smaller vessel because it is undoubtedly adequate for accommodating 2 individuals. Nevertheless, regarding the future, there are 2 important aspects that must be addressed concerning the Scomcat as a primary task for Myst Games. The vessel requires a comprehensive overhaul. It is unacceptable that it sustains 20% damage from even the most minor collision. Such a scenario is unrealistic and, more importantly, profoundly counterproductive. Certain individuals rapidly lose enthusiasm for managing the operation of the ship. Furthermore, there's the concern of docking procedures. The docking spaces are meticulously calculated with precision, and given that the Scomcat, as previously mentioned, is scarcely maneuverable following the update, as I have stated, the Scomcat is a matter that requires attention and resolution. The transportation of passengers itself, the functionality is present, it operates currently, and indeed, as I previously mentioned, with the smaller vessel it also appears to function properly, but we will ascertain more accurately in the near future, because we will naturally also attempt to dock with the vessel, and with the smaller vessel here, it should genuinely not pose an issue. Now that we are indeed on the correct path, so to speak, let's enhance it with a bit more strength and power. Well, until the ferries arrive, and it must be said very clearly, without rose-colored glasses a lot of rework is still necessary. With the most recent update, or rather with the forthcoming one, the Tier 4 vessels are anticipated to arrive, along with the automobile and passenger ferries, so we should indeed anticipate a considerably larger number of passengers. We will subsequently be managing even more substantial vessels, so before that event takes place, adjustments must be made here. Firstly, the docking stations for larger passenger vessels, and as previously mentioned, the Scomcat itself definitely requires readjustment. These are the particular aspects that I observe which necessitate reworking. As I previously mentioned, if it is functioning effectively with the Skill 2 vessel and the passenger transportation, I truly have no grounds for complaint, correct? Ultimately, we must always remember that this remains an early access title, and considering that it already operates significantly better than other titles in their complete versions, one must genuinely acknowledge. You must acknowledge that Myst Games deserves recognition, and as I previously mentioned, they are remarkably swift in their responses, despite being a comparatively small studio. You must give the team the credit they deserve for that, which is precisely why I am occasionally inclined to exhibit a certain degree of leniency here, and justifiably so. Absolutely, because it is quite evident that the team is genuinely putting in a considerable amount of effort, and if something doesn't work out as planned, that's simply the nature of things. Yes, that's simply the nature of things. Particularly with new projects, such occurrences are inevitable, but as I previously mentioned, when the team members notice that there is feedback from the community and something isn't quite right, they don't just disregard it, they actually take action to address it. That's precisely why we're having an open discussion about it here. Therefore, let's arrange a modest celebration here. Given that we're currently piloting the most streamlined and swiftest vessel available within the game, let's seize the opportunity to fully capitalize on its capabilities for a brief period. We have the ability to accelerate to the maximum speed of 30 knots, allowing us to glide effortlessly over the waves. As I have previously mentioned, this is no longer the beta version, it has now become the standard version. If you haven't downloaded the beta, these are actually the features that you regularly, so to speak, in quotes, have in the full version, although you can only say in quotes, it's still early access. But what you have in the current full version is definitely the passenger transport, which works, but as mentioned, the Scomcat is currently not recommended as a ship. These are not particularly extensive distances we are traversing at present, correct? You can observe that we are already maneuvering into the port entrance Rechnungs, where indeed that actually aligns quite appropriately, does it not? For demonstration purposes as a brief journey, precisely as requested, precisely as requested. That suggests I ought to reduce the power just a little bit here shortly, as we are almost able to clearly see the harbor directly ahead of us. Yes, there he is ahead at 12 o'clock. Therefore, if we are able to successfully transport the passengers to this location without encountering any significant issues, incidents, or damages, I would express that I feel somewhat more at ease. Yes, then it is agreeable for me if we proceed with it at this location. My primary concern is guaranteeing that we can conduct the passenger ride in a profitable manner. With the Scomcat, it is not feasible because regardless of how you maneuver, you inevitably end up causing damage. If it functions effectively with the vessel at this moment, as I mentioned previously, for 2 passengers it is rather appealing, then that is satisfactory for me. Additionally, it is faster. The vessel is the swiftest in the game, so that aligns well too. So, dear friends, kindly keep your fingers crossed as we are on the brink of docking here. You can already discern that something indeed went awry with the programming of the Gomcat. This is operating relatively smoothly, ensuring that the vessel remains quite manageable, and the Tier 2 ship here presents no substantial issues with no wobbling, unlike the current situation with the Scom kit. Here you are able to dock quite nicely, so at this moment we have to... Yes, indeed, we are now docked, dear friends. Very pleasant indeed, very pleasant. I must keep a vigilant eye on things. I navigate this small, delightful vessel far too infrequently. However, since we can also undertake passenger assignments here, I might navigate it more frequently. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our intended destination. I wish you a very pleasant day. Farewell. It's a bit silly that they don't just dissolve, right? It would be quite nice if they disembarked, but I'm already glad they are visible at all. For this brief voyage we receive 300 crowns and over 2000 XP, which is satisfactory, I would say. So, after we managed that successfully, I wanted to quickly tighten the bollard here. Can't I do that? I actually wanted to tighten our ropes here. Why isn't that working? Did they deactivate that function again? That was silly, but oh well, I just wanted to quickly check if we can actually get assignments for passenger transport here, or if it's really just the main ports currently. So here we have cargo, 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 and indeed here we have passenger transport. So from here we could continue to Skomvær with 2 passengers again. So it seems that the standard number of passengers is indeed 2 at the moment. Let's leave it at that for now. We can conclude that passenger transport works perfectly. You can currently transport a maximum of 2 passengers. Given the circumstances, that's quite good because, as mentioned, I wouldn't recommend using the Tier 3 ship, the Skomcat, unfortunately. In my opinion, the Skomcat is currently not navigable. As I said, a slight bump against the quay wall already gives you 20% damage, and you end up with a loss. People, keep your hands off it if you want to do passenger trips. Use the Tier 2 service ship. It's a good choice, and above all, very fast. It's the fastest ship in the game, and you won't have any problems docking. So I hope Miss Games sees this video and responds to other feedback from users and fixes the Skomcat again. It's a great ship actually. Once it's back in order, we'll definitely use it again. I like the ship, but at the moment it's just not usable. Yes, as I said, please use the Tier 2 ship for passenger trips. Otherwise, I hope you had a bit of fun and learned something new, or at least got some new information about the current state of chips at sea. Please address and respond to additional feedback from users and rectify the Skomcat once more. It is genuinely a wonderful ship, and if it is restored to proper working order, we will certainly utilize it once again. I am fond of the ship, but at the present moment it is simply not practical. It is simply not navigable, just like that. Yes, as I mentioned, kindly utilize a Tier 2 ship for passenger transport. Otherwise, I hope you had some enjoyment, perhaps didn't acquire new knowledge, but received some updated information about the current status of chips at sea. If you enjoyed it, show some love. Please support this small shop channel. It's very simple. Just let your finger slip on the mouse, click, ring the bell, leave a like, or maybe type a nice comment. I would appreciate it. In that regard, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Ahoy!